Hello there, loves. Welcome back to And World Peace. I am your host, Maggie Gehlsen-Burnett. On today's episode, we have a person who is just fucking chock full of wisdom, all right? Get your notebooks ready. Get out your fucking iPad, I don't know, whatever you take notes on, and strap the fuck in, okay? Because this episode, well, first, some of the things that she said blew my fucking mind. And also, this person is just a delight of a human being. So get ready, all right? But before we get into the episode, you know the drill here. A couple of housekeeping notes. The first is that And World Peace is now on Patreon. It's patreon.com/andworldpeace. This is a way you can support the show on a monthly basis while gaining access to exclusive content. Another way you can support the show from a monetary standpoint is through Spotify listener support. This is a one-time monetary donation done directly through Spotify, but arguably the best way you can support the show is by giving us a rating on iTunes or Spotify. I say us every time, like as if there's another fucking person doing this with me. This is literally just me, Maggie. Hello. So it helps me when you give me a rating, all right? Rate the show. Tell us what you think. All the vibes, you know? And obviously, don't forget to share this on social media. That is another amazing way to support the show by sharing on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, wherever the fuck you are, with friends and family. Also, just as like a general side note here, I want to say just an enormous thank you to everybody who has listened to the podcast so far, who has rated it, who has shared it, who has texted me about it, all of the guests who have been on so far. This has been a true labor of love. I love doing this so much. It is a lot of work, and I do promise to try to hone my craft as I go. So hopefully, as time goes on, the audio quality will only continue to get better. The editing will only continue to get better. You know, all the things. So I really appreciate you being here with me. And yeah, let's talk about today's guest. We have my lovely dear friend, Maria, joining us today. Maria Dominique Lopez is a certified Reiki master, trauma-informed life coach, and the founder and CEO of Ascending Arts, LLC. She utilizes Reiki to help her clients rewire and regulate their nervous systems in order to release stored trauma. Her 3-month-long one-on-one trauma healing program, The Phoenix Rising, teaches people how to achieve post-traumatic growth and heal their trauma once and for all. I will give all the details about how to follow Maria at the end of this episode, or rather, I will let her do that. But yeah, I have known Maria for probably 4 years now. I have had Reiki done with her, distance Reiki healing, and she is just so incredibly gifted in a multitude of ways. Obviously, she is incredibly gifted at Reiki, but she is just so gifted in many other ways. And I love listening to her speak because I just feel like she has so much wisdom, so much knowledge. I learn something new every single time that I am on her Instagram or talking with her or texting with her. I just love her and adore her and think that she is just a fountain of wisdom. So anyway, that's my love note to Maria. And let's go ahead and welcome Maria to the show. Amazing. Well, Maria, thank you so much for taking the time to be with me and for being here. I'm just so excited to chat with you, and we're going to get into all the things. So
Yeah.
a place that I like to start, or a place that I've been starting with guests that I have on the show, is I like to ask a loaded question up front, because then it just kind of like lays it out there. It gets it all out and we can just go from there, you know? So
Yeah.
my question that I start with for a lot of people pertains to my own experiences in pageantry and sort of the unlearning and unbecoming and undoing specifically of self that I had to go through after my time in pageantry was over. And, you know, it happened at multiple other instances during my life, but that was the one I think that was the most prominent, that I can pinpoint to, like, that was the time where so much of me changed. So I'm curious to know about your great undoing, or one of them, because we all have many usually. So I would love to know about your undoing and sort of how it has impacted you in becoming who you are today.
Oh, I love that question so much. Thanks. Wow. Well, I think you're right. I think we go through these times in our lives where we have multiple undoings, right? And the I very much relate to the experience of the Phoenix and the
Mm,
Phoenix Rising. I have a giant Phoenix tattoo. I mean, it's enormous on half of my body. So I mean, the Phoenix is really a part of what I see as my destiny, my path, my journey.
mm,
This burning down of your entire life to then rise from the ashes and build anew, right?
mm.
So I know her very well, the undoing. She and I go way back. And I would say that probably my first big, big, big one was when I was in my Saturn's return. I was 29, and I,
I feel
you're,
that. I'm in the middle of my 28th year and I'm like, this sucks. I'm ready for it to be over.
you're in that shadow period right now. It's only gonna get so much better. So, so I left my first husband. I've been married and divorced twice. And my first husband was incredibly abusive. He was very violent in any way that you can imagine a person can domestically abuse another person. That is what he did to me.
Mm,
We were together for almost 10 years, and I finally left him in the fall of 2013. And that was the beginning of my big undoing. And that undoing has lasted for a very long time. And I'm only just now feeling like I'm on the precipice of being done with that undoing. And so every undoing I have experienced for the last 10 years, 11 years now almost, has been kind of one of those. It all originates at that domino effect point of the catalyst of leaving my ex-husband. And since then, I've gone through many undoings, having to unlearn anorexia, having to unlearn borderline alcoholism, having to unlearn extreme reactivity and PTSD symptoms, having to unlearn creating an identity completely around being a full-time opera singer when the pandemic hit, and then having to unlearn all of this spiritual, egoic, kind of gate kept, whitewashy, toxic positivity crap that came with my spiritual journey. I mean, there were so many things that I had to unlearn to get to where I am now. And all of that started with just this one big T trauma that then kind of created all these little baby behaviors and patterns and beliefs that then had to be unlearned over time. So,
fascinating. Okay. Well, thank you for sharing all of that. And that actually ties in really well with the question I had wanted to ask, which is, more pertains to if someone were to ask you for their own experience, but I would love to know from your experience, when you have all of those things happening to you or going on in your life, how does one even begin to start chipping away at all of those traumas and at the healing process? So I would love to know just sort of how your healing journey went, or sort of like where you started and what it maybe led you into.
oh yeah. Well, it started with therapy,
Mm.
and as many great journeys do. And and then it moved to meditation, and I was still in therapy. I've been in therapy for the better part of a decade. uh,
Mhm.
love me some therapy.
Oh, yeah.
1000% will always recommend the therapizing, and also recognizing that it is not a complete path to healing. It just
Mhm.
can't be.
Right,
uh, the path to healing is so much more holistic than just talking to someone once a week and doing some homework. It just is,
right.
unfortunately. So
Yeah.
if you are in therapy, dear listener, and you think I'm well on my way, Yes and no is my answer to
Yeah.
that. Um, for me, it was really, there was a lot of meditation involved. Oh my God. I cannot tell you how effective and how helpful a tool meditation has been for me, especially with regards to, I don't know about you, but I was not raised in a household that was very comfortable with everyone sitting with themselves. We
Fuck
stay
no.
busy.
Yeah, for
We
sure.
stay busy
Yeah.
because the busier you are, the less you have to think about all of your shit, right?
And the
So,
more accomplished you are, the busier you are. Yeah.
yeah, and the more accomplished and busy you are, the more worthy of love you are. Never mind the fears of why you feel unworthy of love in the first place. Shh, we don't talk about that. Shh, shh, shh.
You just described my entire life experience in like one train of thought.
Right, right. Welcome to my childhood. That's why we're so simpatico. We get each other at a
Exactly.
cellular level. So, I think that is a huge part of it is sitting with yourself in meditation, being willing to kind of look inward at what you're sitting with and just observe without judgment and really learning to be curious and interested in myself in a way that wasn't necessarily narcissistic and self-obsessed, but in a way that was like, oh, why do I do that? Why do
Mm,
I do that?
mm,
What's up with that? Right. And then kind of taking a look at it and be like, oh, that's so interesting. Oh my God, it came from this and that and that. And then all the connections you've made in therapy start to be pulled in. And it's interesting how when you finally shut the fuck up and just
yeah.
listen to yourself and sit with yourself, how much clarity comes through. And I can always tell when I'm about to enter into another undoing phase when I stop wanting to meditate.
Oh yeah, that's
Yeah, stopping wanting to meditate is my sign of like, ooh, girl, you're about to be fucking up huge right now. You're about to make a bunch of big mistakes in your life because you don't want to meditate.
yeah, 100%. I get the same way. Or for me, a big one is I don't want to move my body. So that's a big one for me is like I don't want to feel anything. I don't even want to feel a workout. I just want to like sit and zone out on my phone for hours. So
I would like to let the waves of Netflix wash over me as I
exactly.
completely
Yes.
dissociate.
Exactly. Amazing. Well, that's incredible. So you started on this journey with therapy. You kind of get into the meditation side of things. And then how did this journey all transpire into Reiki? Where did that come in on your journey, your healing journey?
So, God, it is so crazy, Maggie, just to think about the ways that like little choices affect
Yeah.
our lives.
Mhm.
So, let me tell you a wild story. If I had never auditioned for the Arizona Opera Chorus, I would not be a Reiki healer today. And here's
Awesome.
how that worked. I auditioned for the Arizona Opera Chorus in 2012. I got in. 2013 was my first production. And I met the chorus master, Henry Venanci, who loved my voice. And at one point in the next few years, he recommended me for an audition, or excuse me, for a performance here in California.
Mm.
And that performance was where I met my second husband, Teddy. And that's why I moved to California. Now, if I hadn't met my second husband, Teddy, I never would have met his sister, Pammy. Pammy got cancer while we were married. She beat it. She fucking rocked it and killed that cancer dead. Go her. But in the process, she went to Hoag Medical Center in Orange County. And at Hoag, they had a program with I'm not shitting you, this is crazy, with a drum circle facilitator. And Pammy invited me to go with her one time. She's like, you're a musician. You'll probably like a drum circle thing. And you're kind of into meditation now. And I was like, sure, I'll totally go. So I go to this drum circle and I meet Jamie Jones. She is the CEO of Maharoba, which is Maharoba USA, which is a drum circle advocacy group. And they operate in a bunch of hospitals here in Southern California. Yeah,
Wow.
kind of studies done about the healing property of music and particularly rhythm and the ways the vibrations enter into your bloodstream. It's fascinating, fascinating science. So I meet her and I'm like obsessed with this woman. I'm like, I meet her and immediately I'm like, I want to know everything about you. I want to be you. How do I follow you around the country? Like, what are you doing?
Right.
She's a Reiki healer. So I offer to help her facilitate sessions. And in thanks, in gratitude, she offers me some free Reiki sessions. At the
Wow.
time, my second marriage was just imploding. And I was meditating like 45 minutes to an hour a day, just trying to keep my cool, you
Mm.
know. She starts giving me Reiki, and within 2 weeks, my hands started vibrating with energy. And I was like, what is wrong with me? What's going on here? Now, my ex-husband and I, my second ex-husband, we had been in a car accident, like right as she was starting to offer me Reiki. And we were T-boned on the passenger side. He was driving, I was hit by this car that ran a red stop sign. So I thought when my hands started tingling with Reiki, I thought, oh, it's nerve damage, right? Like
Right.
in
Yeah.
this accident, clearly I have some nerve damage. I was going to a chiropractor, I was seeing someone, I was getting acupuncture. I was like, eventually it'll go away. The tingling in my hands didn't stop for 3 months. And every time I put my hands on someone in pain, their pain would go away. And so finally I was like, what is up with this? And so I said to Jamie, I was like, could this be Reiki? And she said, it sounds like it. Yeah, maybe you should go take a class. I recommend my student. And so I went to her student, Brenda, and got certified in Reiki. And it turns out that was exactly what was happening. I had just accidentally attuned myself to Reiki with all the meditation and then receiving Reiki from her. So in long story short, thank you so much, Henry Venanci, the chorus master of Arizona Opera, because otherwise I wouldn't be a Reiki healer today.
Amazing. Oh my gosh, that is so awesome. Like I had no idea. It's always so fun to me when I get to interview people who I like to say like I know them, but I don't know their full story and full like life experience. So I love finding out those little tidbits and little stories about people who I know and love and appreciate, but I just don't know their entire scope of life experience. So I love that. That's so cool. Um, Wow, just fascinating. Okay, so let's move into kind of the inception then of ascending arts. So you become attuned to Reiki. You are, you're actively doing this on clients, I assume, after that. Walk me through sort of how you decided that this was going to be your profession and this was the route you wanted to take in terms of your career.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I was singing opera full time before the pandemic.
Mm,
And I was one of those very blessed singers paying all of my bills just singing. I had finally just like maybe 4 months before the pandemic hit, stopped all the side gigs, no more of those extra jobs doing random things. I was
right.
just singing full time, super blessed. Pandemic hits. Right before the pandemic hit, like maybe I guess it would have been the fall of 2019 was when I accidentally attuned myself to Reiki and started with the tingling hands.
Mhm,
Got certified in Reiki in like December of 2019 in
mhm.
Reiki 1. Got certified in Reiki 2 in March of 2020. Right.
Good
And
timing.
right. And I was already, and for those listening who don't really know a lot about Reiki, Reiki 2 is where you learn how to give distance Reiki. So I don't have to be in person with you. I can send you Reiki from anywhere in the world.
Right.
And in fact, I do have clients all over the world. And Maggie, you were one of my first
Very
clients.
client.
And you were a
Yeah.
distance client. And so at the time, I was really burned out and disillusioned with singing, with opera, with the industry. I'd been singing for almost 15 years. I was tired of struggling. The industry itself was incredibly racist, misogynistic, whitewashed, sexual harassy, and you name
Mhm.
it, it was problematic.
Yeah.
And so I was getting a little bit I was tired. I was tired. And when I found Reiki and I was getting really into meditation and I was just like really in this healing space, I was so on fire for it.
Mm.
And I was really considering, do I quit singing in order to pursue Reiki full time? I love this modality. I really love it. And I just couldn't figure out how to make it work because all of my income was coming from singing. And I live in Southern California, my dude. It is very
Wow.
expensive to live here. So I was like, I can't just give up all of my income to start something new. So
Yeah.
I was trying to figure out how to make that happen when, boom, the pandemic hits. All of my contracts are canceled overnight, $30,000 in canceled contracts like that. All of my church gigs, which is another $30,000 a year, canceled like that. Everything gone, no sources of income coming in whatsoever. And I was like, okay, universe,
Right.
I hear you.
Yeah.
So so I started my business, Ascending Arts, and it was so interesting because a friend of mine, Jonathan, he actually was the one who created my website. If you
Yeah.
see my website, it's fucking beautiful. My friend Jonathan did that. He started his own company making websites during the pandemic, and so he decided to help me out with a website for my Reiki business. And I was telling him, like, I just don't know if I'll ever go back to singing. Like, I don't know how to do it. And he was like, why don't you just do both? There's no rule that says you have to do one or the other.
Mm.
And I can't believe that it took somebody else to say that to me, that I didn't see that, like, oh yeah, we can have whatever we want.
Yeah.
So Ascending Arts was born. Ascending for the Reiki side of the business, arts for the opera singing music side of the business. And so when you go into my website, you see that there's like a page for voice, and then the rest of it's really dedicated to Reiki because that's where the majority of my attention goes now. And
Yeah.
it's so interesting because my favorite thing to tell people about this whole journey with Reiki and singing is that not only was I really disillusioned with the industry, but I was kind of realizing that I had only become a Reiki, I mean, excuse me, an opera singer because I was good at it and people kept paying me to do it, but I didn't really love it.
Mm-hmm.
Like in love with like the perfectionistic nature of having to be like exactly in performance practice of whatever everyone has been singing since 1601. Like,
Right.
don't deviate. You just do what everyone else has done. There's no artistry, there's no soul. There's like, it's really hard to put yourself into that music unless you're super famous and then no one can tell you no, right? But if you're
Yeah.
an emerging artist, you have to just do what performance practice is. And that was starting to get really stale for me. I was starting to lose my love of singing. Now that because I was so terrified of losing my job before, like no one will ever hire me again if I don't do it perfectly. There's so much pressure and there's so much perfectionism. And now that I have this beautiful business helping others that can sustain me in to a certain extent right now, I'm able to be a little bit more courageous with the jobs I take.
Yeah.
Singing. I'm able to be a little bit more courageous and take bigger risks with the way that I present my voice.
Mm.
And so I don't feel as boxed in now by performance practice and perfectionism and all of these other things. And I've actually been able, maybe for the first time in my life, to fall in love with singing again. So
Mm. Oh, that's amazing. That's so beautiful. I love that. I I mean, if you've heard Maria saying, it's like only seen obviously what you've put on social media, but like it's unfucking believable is probably the only phrase I've got for it. Um, and I mean, I feel like I hear your voice, just your speaking voice, and I'm like, I'm very what's the word, particular about people's voices. I get very like like if I take a workout class with somebody who has like a very annoying voice, like I will leave the class. It's like very, I don't know what it's a thing. I don't know. And
absolutely.
so even like listening to you speak, I'm like, oh my gosh, she's got such a good voice. Um, that's just all so lovely and beautiful. And I love that you are allowing yourself to be multifaceted and not just committing yourself to one thing or the other because you're good at it or it makes you money or this, that, or whatever. I love people who allow themselves to be multifaceted because that's what humans are. So I love it.
Yeah,
So
I saw this video. Oh, go ahead.
no, 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 keep going.
I was gonna say I saw this video. Gosh, it was a couple of years ago now. Somebody sent it to me. It was brilliant. Some coach, some like I don't know. He was a keynote speaker at something, and they had kind of pulled him aside, and there was like a group of people around him, and he was at some conference for professionals or whatever, and some woman was asking him a question, and she said, you know, I quit my job in X, Y, and Z to go become a real estate agent. And I was doing real estate for a couple of years and I loved it and I'm great at it. And now I just feel like really burned out and I dread going to work. How do you deal with burnout? And he said, how do you know you're burned out? And she was like, what? And he
Mhm.
was like, okay, I think we all need to get out of this programming that you have to choose one career and be in it for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
That is 1947 bullshit. And we are
Yeah.
not living in the 40s and 50s anymore. We are capable of doing anything. Is it possible that you were really interested in something new? You tried it, you were great at it, and now you're ready to try something else new? Does it have to be burnout, or can you just be a multi passionate individual who has many, many interests? And I was like,
Um,
oh.
Oh, that's so real. Yeah. I relate so heavy to that because I have had people ask me, well, my therapist, not people, One person. I've had one
Hey,
person ask me
hey,
this. Uh,
therapists are
she,
people too, Maggie.
she is a singular human being, but she asked me a similar question, like, how do you know that you're burnt out? And because I relate that to my corporate job quite a bit because well, it's fucking insufferable. It's literally the worst thing ever. So like, yeah. And it's always, it always presents differently whenever I'm burnt out. But I watched this video the other day that I mean, just hit the nail on the head. I'll send it to you after this. It's from
Definitely.
this coach that I love. I found her on TikTok. Her name is Annie Pecci, I think is how you say her last name. And she's a coach for multi-passionate individuals. And she works with a lot of like executives who maybe are sort of in that crisis, that dilemma of like, oh my God, I thought I was going to do this one thing forever. And now I'm burnt out and I hate it and I don't want to do it anymore. And I'm only 40 and I don't want to spend the next, few decades of my life doing work that I don't enjoy. And so she works with a lot of people like that, and she makes just amazing content about being a multi-passionate person. And she had this video the other day where she said, is it burnout or is it bore out? And so she's talking about how when you become bored and if you're multi-passionate and you crave like, new concepts and new challenges and new ideas, that boredom can present in a lot of ways that are similar to burnout. And I was like my whole brain exploded. I was like, holy shit, that makes so much sense. So it's like a
Yeah.
lot of times I think a big symptom of burnout is actually just being so bored because you're like, holy shit, this is like not stimulating anymore to me. So anyway, I just thought that was like the most mind-blowing thing I've ever heard in my life, which it may not be for everybody, but I was like, holy fuck, this is amazing.
I think it's really mind blowing, and I think it would be mind blowing to a lot of people. I think we forget how curious of a species we are. We're
Yes.
really curious, but we're also incredibly adaptive, which means that when we learn how to do something, it becomes familiar. And by the time it becomes too familiar, it literally sucks our will to live. I was just talking to a friend of mine who's a coach. She was my business coach. Her name is Daria Andrea, and she's actually a
Yes.
part.
I know
Yeah, she's
Daria. Or
both
I
of
don't
friends.
know her, but I follow her. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. She was just telling me about this Huberman podcast where they're talking about new scientific study or scientific research where they found a part of your brain that is essentially responsible for your will to live and for discipline and desire, like motivation. And what they've found is that when you do things that you don't want to do, this part of the brain grows, thereby increasing your desire to live. When you do things you want to do all the time and you just consistently go back to the same thing over and over and over and over again, that piece of your brain actually shrinks, thereby shrinking your desire to live. So if you're doing things that are too familiar all the time, it's actually worse for your desire to keep living. What
Wow.
you need actually in order to want to have the will to live is to keep changing shit up.
Oh my God, that's fascinating.
Right.
You know what? That makes so much sense to me though. Like, and it makes so much sense as to why people, when they like, for example, when they retire and and then they start doing all these other things. Like my mom is about to retire in May, and she has been a dental hygienist for 50 years, 50 years in May. And she, has recently started getting into like astrology and like her natal chart and like and so I mean of course I'm like fuck yeah, let's go, like let's talk
Yes.
about astrology, but so I mean I love it for her, and I think it's amazing that she's opening herself up to learning more about herself. And she's, my parents are almost 73, so I just think it's amazing. But it's like that makes so much sense to me that this chapter of life is closing, and therefore also a skill that she's been doing for 50 years every day, is kind of coming to a close. So the brain's natural, innate thing that it wants to do is to learn more stuff about, and explore more interests, which is just, I think it's amazing when people do that as they are entering that next, phase of life. So that is so fucking nuts. Oh my God. You just literally blown my mind. That's crazy. Okay, so I want to double down on your business for a moment because there's a piece of it that I want to talk about. So you tell me when this happened. I can't remember the exact like time frame as to when you implemented this, but you do a sliding scale fee system, correct, for your services? Okay. So what prompted that? And I'd love to just know kind of your ideas behind that as it relates to, you know, living in like a capitalistic world and a place where we have to make money to survive and all of those things. I just want to hear like literally just be a stream of consciousness about that topic.
Great. So what you're asking me to do is do live shadow work right here with you. They
Perfect.
record
Yes.
it.
Great.
Awesome. Sweet. Um, so back a little backstory on why I'm calling it live shadow work in front of you is
Perfect.
because my partner and I just spent some time this week talking about my sliding scale.
Mm,
Financially, the business is not doing as great as it can be doing right now.
mhm.
And there are a lot of reasons for that that I'm not going to place squarely on the shoulders of my sliding scale. And I think it's a lot of my problems are having to do with the business model that I created during a pandemic that no longer is the driving force of the way we do business. This
Sure.
pandemic's over. I'm aware that it's not. And also, we're not completely quarantined. We're not completely online anymore. And so I'm finding a need to change up my business practices to try and find partnerships and collaborations in person where I can do more in-person Reiki sessions, where I can have a space to go to and host group Reiki sessions, like those kinds of things in person,
Right.
right? And I think that that will probably help my business model a lot because I have had a lot of inquiries about in-person Reiki. And no, I will not allow perfect strangers that I don't know to come to my home and receive Reiki. So I got to find a place to do this thing. But the sliding scale I implemented this past summer in 2023, and I always I've been messing around with the fee structure of my business since its inception. I
Mm,
have always had free healing days for BIPOC, always. That's been since the minute I opened my business. That was something that I made available. So on Tuesdays every week, anyone who is a BBA, Black, Brown, Asian, or Indigenous can come to oppression healing, which is one-on-one sessions. They're not group sessions, and get any Reiki they want for free as often as they want.
mhm.
I also offer full scholarships, 5 full scholarships in every cohort for my year-long Reiki Master Training certification, Ascension 101. And so I give away $50,000 in every cohort worth of scholarships of my work to Black, Brown, Asian, and Indigenous applicants. And that's something that's always been there. And then
Mhm.
I also had started in the beginning of my business the idea of receiving energy exchange. And a lot of that was, and by energy exchange, I mean, like, let's say you have something that I want. Let's say you're a real estate agent and I'm looking for a
Sure.
house, right?
Mhm.
You be my real estate agent for free, you cut your fee, and I'll give you a lifetime's worth of free Reiki or whatever, right? Like we barter,
Totally.
right? Um,
Right.
I used to have like a wish list on Amazon or on these other sites, and my clients would like buy something and have it sent, something that might be less than a Reiki session, but something that I knew I needed, like a book or a tea kettle or whatever.
Right.
So I had that for a while, and then I finally just went to just a regular pay structure for a while.
Mhm.
But then, weirdly, I went viral on TikTok last year.
Yes.
And when I went viral on TikTok, I just started seeing the same pattern over and over and over again, which were thousands of people every week commenting on my videos saying how desperately they wanted to work with me and how they wished they could afford to.
Mm,
And a lot of the work that I do on my TikTok is discussions about CPTSD, complex post-traumatic stress disorder.
right.
And it is a very difficult thing to treat, and there are very few practitioners in the world who treat it. And that is because it's not really well understood. Traditional therapy, especially in our country, in this country, in the United States, the DSM-5 doesn't recognize CPTSD as an official diagnosis, which means most therapists don't actually ever learn in school how to deal with complex trauma.
Mm,
And that is very concerning considering how many people in the world have it and how insidious it is and how difficult it is to treat. So knowing that because I utilize Reiki and I'm a trauma informed life coach and I use Reiki to help people specifically heal their trauma. And because I have a diagnosis of CPTSD, and because I know how hard it is to heal just from my own personal experience, let alone the clients that I work with, I just got to a point where I just couldn't look myself in the mirror anymore without being able to offer a sliding scale. I needed to be able to just do that. And
Mm.
so I did it on an honor system. I still do it on an honor system, which
Yeah.
is if you feel comfortable paying the full price, you can pay the full price. If you feel like you would like to pay more than the full price so someone else doesn't have to, you can do that. Or there are levels to how little you can pay for the sliding scale. My life coaching, my trauma-informed life coaching at this current moment starts at $35 at the sliding scale. My Reiki sessions at this current moment start at 75 at the sliding scale. Now, this is where the discussion came in and the shadow work came in with my partner this week is discussing the rising cost of living
Yeah.
and the idea that probably my sliding scale should be increasing in price by a few dollars every year in order to keep up with the cost of living just for me.
Of course. Yeah.
So having to reconcile like wanting to be able to help and also needing to eat,
Yeah.
uh, those kinds of things. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. I'm consistently checking in with myself about what feels good and what feels in my body like it's now something I resent or now something I don't feel is aligned, and then making adjustments where I need to make adjustments as a business owner to still live by my own mission and
Yeah.
my own values, and also survive in this capitalistic society that requires me to have something as stupid as money in my pockets. So, um,
Yeah.
my mission is to create a ripple effect of healing that covers the globe in love and brings about a true utopia. And that ripple effect can't happen unless I reach as many people as possible. My values are values of equity, decolonization, love, and compassion, right? And so that's why all of those things kind of come into play with the free healing and the sliding scale and all those things, trying to have compassion, equity, decolonization in this particular wellness field.
Yeah. Mm, that's so good. I think so many people would it would do them well as practitioners to maybe take a page out of your book on this one. Um so that sort of just brings up a question that I just have after you said all of that. Do you believe it's possible for abundance, in however that looks to you, abundance and ethics to exist, to kind of coexist in a business?
Mm. Oh, it's such a good question. I think I used to believe the answer to that question was no.
Mm,
Uh, I used to believe that in order to make the kind of money that one would consider truly abundant, that you would have to step on others.
mhm,
Um, because we see it happen all the time with the 1% of the world that holds the majority of the money, that the majority of their money has been made in the process of stepping on the necks of those less fortunate, the other 99%, right?
mm,
Um, Here's what I believe. I believe that money is an enhancer. I believe that money enhances what's already in you. If
mm,
what's in you is someone who lacks ethics and morals and integrity to consider the impact they have on those around them, then having more money or desiring more money is only going to expand that behavior in you. If you're
mm,
someone who's already generous of spirit, then having more money is going to give you the opportunity to be more generous of spirit and
right,
expand that quality in you. If you're someone who has a deep passion for social justice, then having more money is going to give you more power to make the difference in social justice circles that you would
right.
like to make. It's going to enhance that quality in you. So I think that money is it's a tool that
Mhm,
enhances what is already in your heart.
mm,
And I think that it's important that we remember that, because a lot of people who are looking for abundance have a really hard time chasing it or accepting it
yeah,
because they're worried it will change them. I don't think it does. I think it enhances who you already are. So if you know who you are
yeah,
and you say, know I'm a good person and these are the things I would love to do with that level of abundance. Go chase it, go get it,
Mm,
right? That's what I'm trying to do for myself here in this. I have so many, oh geez, I have so many dreams. That mission that I told you, that's the biggest one. I mean, that's a huge mission. It's
yeah.
it's damn near naive. I know I may not find or create a utopia in this lifetime. I understand that. And also to achieve that, I cannot do it alone. I need people with me. I need a movement of some kind. I need to expose myself to as many people as possible and the ideals that created that mission. And in
Mhm.
order to do that, I'm probably going to need a lot of money.
Yeah, exactly. Mm, that's a great way of viewing it. I think, yeah, money has just become so, or the topic of money rather has become, I mean, it's just become something that it used to be taboo, right? Like it used to be this thing where nobody wanted to talk about it because if you talked about money, then it said something about the type of person that you were. And now it's become this thing where now nobody's talking about it anymore because like they're just everybody's tired of talking about it. So it's like I love the chance to be able to ask people their opinions on it because it just I think it needs to be talked about more, and it needs to be we need to talk about the fact, the glaringly obvious fact that if more good people have a lot of money, then our world changes in positive ways. And that was something that one of my previous guests had spoken about and how she said something like, I want to be an influencer. Like I want to be famous. I want to have all these followers and and something to that effect and she said because the more followers I have, the more of an ability I have to make a change and to, be and to spread my mission further. And I think it's the same with as it relates to money. So, I love that you brought that up. You mentioned and I literally had this written down on my sheet over here. You went viral on TikTok talking about CPTSD. I want to know just as somebody else who's gone viral on TikTok, not for a topic that is like as helpful as you have been with yours, but mine was just like bullshit videos. But I would love to know what that experience has been like. And you said, you have all these people in your comments all the time being like, hey, I want to get Reiki from you or I want to work with you, but I can't afford it. Like, talk me through that experience and what that's been like in terms of your own boundaries, because I know that that is something on social media that is incredibly difficult, is to have all these people bombarding you, being like, I want to work with you, but I can't afford it. Meh, 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 meh. Like, or just spilling their own kind of stories to you about really traumatic shit that's happened. That's like a lot to handle through, like, it doesn't matter how you're receiving those stories, be it through somebody telling you in person or on the internet, it's a lot to handle. So I'd love to know just kind of like, what that viralness quote has been like and how you've protected your peace in the midst of all of it.
It's such a good question. I wouldn't say that I have necessarily mastered that yet. I'm still
Definitely
finding
an
my
art.
way.
I said it's an art, I think, for
Yeah,
sure.
absolutely, absolutely. I'm still fucking around and finding out with that, and
Same girl, same.
find my way. But I have implemented certain boundaries, which is number one, I don't give free coaching in DMs.
Mhm.
So if you have a question and you want me to make a video about it, you can comment on one of my videos, or you can allow me to take a screenshot of your question that you leave me in DMs, and I will make a video out of it that can help other people.
Right.
Um, but I don't do free coaching in DMs. That's one of the biggest ones. I will often refer people to my link in bio. So that's something.
Mhm.
Times a day. I only create videos when I'm having my coffee in the morning, which is why you always see a coffee cup in my videos. As soon as one, I only have one cup of coffee a day because anxious BBs should not have a lot of caffeine.
Same
It's not.
girl.
So I only have the one cup of coffee a day, and in that time, I make as many videos as I can possibly make in that time. And the minute the last sip of coffee is done, I'm done.
Yeah.
Um, I check comments on my TikToks once or twice a week. I'm
Mm.
not great at responding immediately to comments most of the time, unless I have things that I know, like I posted a video yesterday that I know people are going to comment on, that are going to give me the opportunity to post a follow-up that I really want to post anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
Waiting for that comment to come in, it just came in. I just recorded it right before I got on this thing, right? But
Perfect.
there's a plan in place for those kinds of things. For the most part, I only look at comments once or twice a week. I have gotten really good about the block and delete
Yeah.
situation. The block and delete situation is a really great thing for me. I generally speaking don't want to silence people, but I have a really hard line at abusing others in my comments. I don't allow that to happen. If someone is coming in and like talking shit to someone in my comments, they're gone. I don't care. I don't care what they're saying. If you're abusing people in my comments, you're out.
Yeah.
Um, and then additionally, like I'm fine handling it when people say things to me, because generally speaking, what I do is someone says something unkind to me in a comment, and I immediately start a draft of a video response to them. And I wait usually for 2 days to up to 3 weeks, sometimes 4 weeks before I actually create the real video. And until I can get into the energy of compassion and releasing around it, I don't respond.
Mm.
Um, I'd probably honestly get a lot more views if I would just pop off every once in a while, but I don't, because I'm really trying to create a world that's more loving and compassionate, and that is in line with my mission. And
Yeah.
so I try to respond to people in a way that shows them that I see their pain, and that I see that behind someone, harassing me on the internet is a person who's probably in pain. And I've said something that's triggered them, or something that, I mean, I talk about trauma, for goodness sake. It's not like I'm talking about light shit here. So a lot of
Right.
people do get triggered by the things that I have to say. Not all the time. I mean, I'm trying to do it in a way that's going to be as non-triggering as possible, but occasionally you'll get someone who will really latch onto something I say. So that's one of the ways. And then another way is I actually created a video that I'm really proud of, that I've pinned to the top of my TikTok, and I actually downloaded it and pinned it to the top of my Instagram too. And that is a video about my expectations for people who are on my social media. And it's a really lovely, really compassionate, really kind video that talks about how I expect a lot from the people who follow me, chief among them that they be kind to each other, that they, take the lesson if it fits and leave the rest, that they be the kind of people who can access nuance and understand that there is no way I can access enough nuance in a 3 to 10 minute video to talk about any subject, and to kind of be a little generous with themselves and with me in that, to not project their pain onto me and to not assume I'm projecting my pain onto them. Those kinds of expectations, right? And the
Mm.
way that I made that video, it was almost a channeled thing. It was so weird. Like I just channeled it right through me and put it out there. And it was something that I'm really proud of and I've pinned. And so usually my response when someone comes on and I can see they're projecting or they're making a bunch of assumptions about me or whatever, I'll just direct them to that video and be like, there's a video pinned at the top of my page that says, watch this first, go do that. See you soon.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. Oh, that's just I need to take notes on everything you just said. I I realized last year I made a video and it was the dumbest video of all time. First of all, it was like aesthetic things that I think are stupid.
Oh, I loved that video series.
It
It was so funny.
it was just like, it just I was hungover on a Sunday. I was laying on the floor right back there. And I literally just was like, I'm sick of this shit. I'm sick of the pampas grass that I'm seeing all over TikTok. I'm done. So I like made this video, whatever. Goes viral, gets like it's my highest performing video to date, I think, and it has like I think 2 million views or something. And the the I had to like I got off TikTok for like a couple of weeks after. Like I made a follow-up video and then I just like didn't post for a while. And I realized like I was so triggered by all these people who were commenting, being like, well, you're no fun, like you're a piece of shit, like and I was having a really hard time exercising like the delete and the block and I just kind of felt the need to be like, I'm either going to completely shut down or I'm going to like lose my shit on you in my comment section. And so I was like, best to just like not do anything at all for now. And now looking back, I'm like, I think that was almost a year ago now. I'm like, okay, What this was like a masterclass in A, your inability to be seen on the internet, and B, which is something you want that you want. And so it's just like all this shadow work that came out of like a TikTok that I made. So
Oh, seriously, that is exactly what it's been. First of all, I have taken like 3 or 4 sabbaticals from TikTok since I went viral,
yes,
just like that. Weeks. This last one was damn near 4 months long. Like, really, I mean, I get it. And
totally.
also, you're right. It's totally a masterclass in like nervous system resilience,
Yeah.
in receiving criticism, in being shown maybe things you don't want to see about yourself, in being misunderstood, in
Yeah.
being visible. Absolutely. I mean, there are so many parts. I have definitely become so much better at being visible online and in my marketing for my business because of going viral on TikTok, and most importantly, because of feeling overwhelmed by the negative responses.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. It's so funny to me because like you and I are both performers. And that is something that I think, we both identify with. And so you would think that, you go viral and people start like popping off in your comments, whatever, being assholes on the internet like people do. And you would think that people who have a history of performing or who are comfortable in front of audiences, like wouldn't be like that we would be the exceptions to the rule, but it's like, nope, you still are just going to be triggered as fuck when this happens. So,
I mean, I don't know. Some part of me wonders if it's not even harder for performers because we have already received so much rejection in our lives that
mhm.
we just don't have the resilience anymore for any more rejection, let alone rejection on a
Totally.
mass scale.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, that's a great point. I never thought of it that way. That's so smart. Yeah. I feel like I I had this comment one time that's just like sticking out in my brain of this guy who commented on my video, and it reminded me so much of a similar comment that was made to me when I was doing pageants. And it was, a comment that was made about my body and like, my just sort of my physical present or my physical appearance. And it triggered me so much. And I like popped off on this guy, like in the comments, just was like, and I mean, I think I made more than one. Like, I think I was like, just like, just going off on this person. And I realized that, like, this is again another masterclass in this. You don't feel better when you do that, right? Like you don't feel better. It feels good for maybe a minute and a half, and then it's like it goes away, and all you're stuck with is just like this just depth of rejection and like failure and, triggeredness that that you haven't experienced for a long time, maybe. And so yeah, I think to your point, it's just I think performers are sensitive people sort of by nature. So it's like you put a performer on TikTok and they go viral, and it's like, well, here we are. So yeah.
I always think of Jeffrey Marsh whenever I'm trying to figure
Yes.
out how to respond to haters on the internet. I always think about
Yes.
Jeffrey Marsh
Oh,
because they are just the fucking rayiest ray of sunshine in the whole world. And I'm deeply in love with everything about them.
yes.
And I try to aspire to be just like Jeffrey Marsh. Like, how
Yes.
can I respond with love? How can I lead with love? How can I create the world that I want to see in response in the face of rejection? And here's
Mhm.
the thing about rejection, which I think is just so hard, but really interesting from a neuroscientific standpoint. So we're a communal species, right? We are hardwired for love and connection because we evolved in community, right? We evolved in these tribes all over the world during the ice ages and stuff. And like, the women would stay and guard the camp and tend to the sick men and, feed the hearth and all that shit. And then the men would go and hunt and shit and bring food back, right? And we survived in groups. Now, if you did something to be rejected from the community and exiled, your ass was definitely going to die. You were going to get eaten by a saber-toothed tiger. You were going to freeze to death in the next ice age. Like, you were 1000% a dead person if you were
Yeah.
rejected by community, right? So this is an evolutionary, your autonomic nervous system, which is what carries all of your survival instinct and PS, all of your trauma. Your autonomic nervous system is 50 million years old. It has never once received an iOS update. Okay.
Right.
So your autonomic nervous system believes that rejection equates to death, which is why we get so nervous when we're public speaking or when someone comes online and pops off on us or when we get broken up with or whatever. It feels to our nervous system like, holy shit, DEFCON 5, bitch, you're about to die. Go find some help. Like, really,
Yeah.
this is a big deal to the nervous system. So while logically we can understand, I don't care what those haters on the internet say. My nervous system is going, oh my God, DEFCON 5, we're about to die immediately.
Fascinating. Oh my God. That, I mean, I, like when you say it like that, I'm like, well, yeah, duh, obviously. Like it's not like our nervous system's ever got a software upgrade. Like they're shit, no, they're the same old shit that we've been dealing with for years, centuries. Like that makes
Eons.
total sense. Oh my gosh. Oh gosh, you are just full of all of the wisdom. I love it.
Random
Okay,
little hits.
before we get to World War or World Peace, there is a topic I'm dying to know about from your perspective. So we have talked about, you and I personally have talked about this before, about spirituality, Catholicism in particular, sort of coming from, I came from Catholicism. I'm not a practicing Catholic, but that's what I grew up as. You are a practicing Catholic still, correct? And ish, yeah, that's totally fine. That's totally fine. And
Ish.
so I'm just curious to know sort of the evolution of like your spiritual journey and how that led you to Catholicism.
Oh, what a good question. So I was raised by atheists bordering on agnostics. My parents did not believe in God. They both had come from incredibly Christian households. My dad had a very negative experience as an altar boy in the Catholic Church. That is all I'll say about that. My mother, she was raised by like super hypocritical Christian people who like said one thing on Sundays, did another thing every other day of the week, that
Mhm.
kind of thing. So they were
Mhm.
like not into religion. And they raised me to believe that if you're a good person and you treat others with humanity and kindness, that you're going to be fine at the end of this life. No matter what happens, if there's a God, if there's not a God, whatever, you're going to be okay.
Yeah.
And so that's how I was raised. Fast forward to college. I was in a touring choir and we were down at the San Javier Mission de Bac in it's just south of Tucson, Arizona.
Mm.
We're on tour of the Southwest. And we went into this, it's the oldest mission in the United States. And we went into this mission and it's so beautiful. It's like all frescoes and it's just gorgeous. If you ever have the chance to visit, you really should.
Yeah.
It's such a beautiful church. So we go in, and our choir director asks the priest if we can sing something because we're a choir in town, blah, blah, blah. The acoustics in there are dope. So he's like, yeah, sure, but it has to be religious. And we're like, okay, well, we happen to have a piece by Morton Lawrenson called O Magnum Mysterium, which in Latin means "O Great Mystery."
Mm.
And it's basically about, the song is about the mystery of the birth of Jesus Christ in the manger with Mary and like all of the animals around him and all of the stuff.
Mm.
It's just like the way that the song is written. Morton Lawrence is an incredibly talented composer. He was the composer in residence for the LA Master Chorale for many years. So just really talented guy. And it's a very devotional song, like the way that it's written. And we get to this one part where we're singing Virgo Virgin. And it's a really tight harmony spot. And it's just, oh, it's so juicy. And it's like everyone's singing really quiet and the echoing is happening in the church. And all of a sudden, I feel physically pressure on my collarbone of like a hand pressing against my chest.
Mm.
And I could feel it there. And I was like, whoa. And I was like, oh my, I had like this moment. I was like, oh my God, God is real. And this is why I'm here is to praise him through song and like all this stuff. I had this big conversion moment. And then like a couple months later went home to my family for Thanksgiving. We always say what we're thankful for around the table, whatever. And I was like, I'm so thankful that this year, like I had an experience that I discovered God. And my parents just like laughed me out of the room, right? They were just like, this is the most ridiculous thing we've ever heard. Um, but every time I wanted to feel that closeness again to a supreme being, I would always go to the Catholic church in town near my
Mm.
college. I didn't
Mhm.
go to any other churches. I mean, I did, but like I never felt his presence there. I only felt him in the Catholic church for some reason.
Mm.
Now I know why, but I didn't at the time. Fast forward to when I was leaving my abusive first husband. he had convinced me to quit singing if I hadn't found a paying gig by a certain date. And I left him like 3 weeks before that deadline. But
Mm-hmm.
for some reason, I still had that date in my mind.
Mm.
So I was about to quit when my friend Nancy's mother blessedly died after a very painful battle with MS she was battling for a really long time. And so Nancy asked me, will you sing her funeral? And I said, of course, like anything for you, of
Wow.
course. So I go to this Catholic church to sing this funeral. I meet up with the music director beforehand to rehearse, and he's like, hey, my cantor just left for a 2-year mission to Mexico. Do you want a job? And I was like, yeah, sure. I love that. I'd never had a church gig before. I'd never sung in a church before. I knew nothing about the Catholic liturgy except for what they taught me in like music history, which was not a lot.
Right.
And so I started working for the Catholic Church then. And I started singing in Arizona, where I had lived at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And the church choir there were so nice to me. They were just so sweet. They didn't care that I didn't know anything about the liturgy. They didn't care I wasn't Catholic. They didn't care that I didn't know any of the songs and kept fucking up the same songs that they've been singing since like 1958. Like they were so nice. And it was just like really lovely to be accepted in that group that way. And I just felt like I really felt the presence of Christian love when I was around these people. So fast forward again to when I meet my second husband, maybe 7 or 8 months later. He's Catholic. We date for 6 months, we get engaged. A year later, we get married. He really wants to have a sacramental marriage in the Catholic Church.
Mm-hmm.
And so I look into getting an annulment of my first marriage. Well, I could have called my abuser into trial and done like a full annulment and had to have
Right.
and I was terrified that I was not going to do that. I
Right.
couldn't. Or I could get baptized in favor of the faith, and then boom, my first marriage never existed. So I got baptized Catholic. But it occurred to me at the time when I went through RCIA, which is the Rite of Christian Initiation for Adults, for those who are listening who aren't Catholic. When I went through that class and all of this, they asked me, why are you becoming a Catholic? And I remembered how all of these different things kept leading me to
Yeah.
Catholicism, right? Like just all of these different road signs. Now, I have never been one who's agreed with the dogma of the Catholic Church. I have never agreed with the politics of the Catholic Church. That's for damn sure.
Right.
And so I didn't know why I was being called. And I was like, you know what? I'm being called towards Catholicism. This is clearly the like last straw, as my husband really wants me to have a sacramental marriage. I'll do it. And I just have to believe that someday I'm going to know why I'm
Yeah.
being Catholic Church. Now, in the Catholic Church, when I was, I started cantering. I've been cantering now for the Catholic Church for over 10 years, almost. Yeah, over 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I've probably sung, I don't know, carry the two, like 1,000, 2,000 masses in the
Oh,
last 10 years, like a lot.
wow.
And I mean, I sing approximately 50 funerals a year, 20 weddings a year on top of Sunday masses, which I used to sing 3 or 4 on top of Christmas and Easter, which would be like 15 or 20 masses in a weekend. So, I mean, I've sung a lot of
Wow.
Catholic masses, my
Yeah.
dude, like a lot.
Wow.
And I think I've just had so many experiences that were like so miraculous
Mm.
whilst being in the Catholic Church during masses. Like I've had visions of like saints walking down from heaven, like all these weird things that are very spiritual and woo, but were related to the Catholic faith. And I think that was what started me on the path to like starting to believe that transubstantiation could be real. And I
Mm.
think the reason why I needed to be able to believe that miracles were possible was so that when Reiki started flowing out of my hands, I didn't think I was losing my fucking mind. So, so
Absolutely.
I think that's why. I honestly think that me becoming a Catholic prepared me to
Yeah.
experience what Catholics consider to be the healing hands of Christ coming
Mhm.
through me in a way that didn't feel completely foreign or like I was, having some sort of mental break from reality,
Yeah.
but rather that miracles can happen and they happen all the time.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's You always provide such a kind of refreshing way for me to look at Catholicism. Um, because I've had my own very like I won't say troubling history with it, but troubling in some periods and uh and not, and fine in others. Like, I think I really enjoyed a lot of my time working in like youth ministry things like that. But every time I talk to you about Catholicism, I have kind of a renewed sort of outlook on it. And I always appreciate that because I think, eventually, like, my husband and I would like to send our children to a private school, and like that private school is the same private school that my husband attended, and it's a Catholic school, like things like that, where it's just kind of like it's just the thing you do. And so, you know, I think that has talking with you about Catholicism has certainly improved my outlook on the church. And I am curious as it relates to sort of the politics and things like that of the Catholic Church. How do you how do you sort of like hold both of those together? Like, that the Catholic Church is not perfect and that they have made a lot of mistakes and that they're still making mistakes and, all of the things. How do you still sort of believe in this institution that has sort of a troubling history, basically?
Oh, it's such a good question. And the answer is I don't. I don't believe in this institution that has had such a troubling history, which is why when you asked me, like, you're still a practicing Catholic, and I was like, ish.
Yeah.
Ish because I take communion every week when I'm singing for the Catholic Church
Sure.
and I cash their paychecks. And, ish because I recognize that not only are they the largest colonizing force on earth, which is in direct antithesis of my values of decolonization, right? But that also the level of power that they wield unethically across the globe is in direct violation of my mission, right? So,
Mhm.
um, I don't believe in this institution.
Mm,
Now, what
mhm,
I do believe allows me to have a prayerful life in any single church I enter, no matter the denomination or religion. And
mm,
that is a little more complicated. So, first of all, let me start with the Catholic thing. I love the Catholic liturgy so much, and I love it because it is the amalgamation of all of the colonized practices of my people
mm.
in one mass, right? They colonized almost almost the entire world, with the
Yeah.
exception of like a lot of East Asia, right? But for the most part, a lot of the world has been colonized by Catholicism and by the Christian church. And because of that, when the Catholics were colonizing, they were adopting prayer, life, and spiritual practices from all of these cultures they were suppressing in order
Mm.
to make it easier to convert these people. So, yeah. So if you go to
Fascinating.
like, yeah, so if you go to like Catholic churches in Mexico and you see the ways that they have all the saints lined up, the ways that they have all the saints lined up is exactly the way the Aztecs had all of their gods lined up. And the Virgen de Guadalupe, for example, like all of her vestments and everything are exactly like an Aztec god.
Right.
Just
Yeah.
looks exactly like what their Aztec god was for this particular. So like that's, all blood sacrifice, like the idea of drinking the blood, that's the Celts. Like there's all these different
Right.
religions and practices all over the world that have been amalgamated together to create what we now know as the Catholic liturgy. And this is the only place where I feel I can really pray with my ancestors, is in
Mm.
the Catholic Church, because I'm praying in the ways they prayed. Unfortunately, now in the house of their colonizer.
Yeah.
But I keep that in mind when I walk through the doors, that I'm here to be with my ancestors. I'm not here to be with their colonizers. So
Mm.
that's a big way that I'm able to reconcile one piece of it. The
Yeah.
other part is my own belief, which is that every single religion is wrong and every single religion is right. I
Mm.
think of God like this, let's say a screen, okay? And let's say you put a doily up to your face, okay? Like a paper doily with all the holes in it that your grandma
Yeah.
used to keep pots on a coffee table.
Yeah.
Like one of those. You put it up to your face. Each hole in the doily is one religious institution or one religious belief.
Yeah.
When you look through that hole, you see a specific picture of God that looks a certain shape, right?
Mhm.
You twist, if you turn that doily in front of your eye, even just a little bit, the entire picture of what God looks like changes,
Mm.
right? But God is still God.
Yeah.
My personal belief, and what I love about all of this for anyone listening is that I can't know if any of this is true, and neither can you. And I find that incredibly comforting.
Right.
Nobody knows if God actually exists. Anyone who says, well, this is the truth, I'm like, okay, you tell yourself whatever you need to do to sleep.
Yeah. Right. Right.
But my personal belief, and I love that I have no idea if it's true or not, is that everything is God. You're God. your glasses are God, this computer is God, I'm God, my cat is God. My cat is definitely God. She knows she's God. Like everything in the universe, atoms are God. And that at one
Wow.
point we were one being that expanded ourselves into this existence because we fucking could. And we wanted to see what it would be like to live in this existence. And at some point, just as every action has an equal and opposite reaction, we will come back into oneness. Maybe that's when we die. Maybe that's when the whole world implodes. Who knows? I have no idea.
Yeah.
But that's why it makes it so easy for me to feel really prayerful in the Catholic Church, just as much like receiving the Eucharist into me, just as much as it feels prayerful to be in any other church, because to me, it's all God. Nature is
Mhm.
church. This
Yeah.
conversation is church. Every
Mm.
good meal is church.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's so good. I love that. My a friend of mine recently started well, she's probably the episode before you. I have to edit a lot of episodes, but anyway, so she opened a movement studio. I don't ever want to say like fitness studio, because it's just so much more than that, but it's called Sanctuary Studios. And um, she said on this podcast, she was like, I had this idea that maybe someday we would put it in an old church because it would be like the concept of returning home to yourself and like sort of this idea that like your body is church, and I was like, oh God, that's good. So I totally like I relate to that so deeply that, yeah, like people have different outlooks on what church and God and all of the things mean, but I think ultimately it's like the way I think of it is like, well, what do you define as love? So like what does love mean to you? And that for me is church. Like, so okay, maybe one day it's like moving my body, but maybe the other day it's having this conversation with you, and maybe the next day it's I don't know, listening to a beautiful song or something, like, whatever. So I love that you have found a way for it to be true for you no matter where you are. Like it's a you thing, not a them thing, which I think is just the best way to view like our spirituality as a whole. So I love that. Mm.
Totally. And to piggyback off what you said with your friend who wants to put her movement class into a church, if you're God, if I'm God, if God is in everyone and everything, that means God resides in you. And where does God live? God lives in heaven, which makes your body a literal heaven on earth.
Mhm. Mm. Yeah, I love
Yeah,
it.
you are the temple, you are the vessel, you are the church, you are the heaven.
Yeah. That's so good. I love it. Okay. So let's go off of this beautiful, lovely moment and let's go into a little round of world war or world
Yeah.
peace. We'll talk
Yeah.
about.
All right.
Okay, so for those listening that don't know what this section is, it's a little ditty in the show where we obviously piggyback off the name of the podcast. It's World War or World Peace. And I just basically ask the guest about things that pertain to them, and they tell me if they think they're shit or if they're great. So that's basically the scoop. So for you, Maria, first thing I have to know about is these Reiki certifications that are online that are like very quick and like very scary looking. Like I got like an ad for one the other day and I was like, I have to ask her about this because they're so troubling. Like they are like the McDonald's gift certificate of Reiki. And like I must know the thoughts on those.
Okay, definitely war on this one. I am at
I
war with
figured as
all of
much.
these certifications. I know that's why you asked it. All right, look, you can go and get a Reiki certification at a weekend retreat at the Marriott for $500, but it doesn't mean you're going to know how to actually funnel the energy through your body and into someone else to promote their balance and well-being. What you're learning is an alphabet of Reiki symbols that you're going to draw onto somebody and pretend. And that is why Reiki is such a joke in so much of the world, and especially in the United States, because we have westernized and colonized Reiki and capitalized it to the umpteenth degree. And it's no longer something where you can learn Reiki is a shamanic, indigenous, Shinto, Japanese practice that is millennia old.
Mhm.
And when Mikao Usui discovered it in 1920, 1922, what he was really doing was just creating a westernized curriculum for teaching it very easily and making money off of it even more easily. And
Mm.
that is something that I don't think he did intentionally with that idea in mind, but that was the result. And that's unfortunate. So, my Reiki master certification program, I mean, it took me years of being a Reiki master to actually decide I was ready to teach anyone. And it was because I was reconciling myself with the way that we teach and deciding I got to do this differently. So,
Yeah.
my Reiki master training program is a year long with an optional 2 extra months after. So 14 months total if you do the whole program. And by the time you're done, you will actually know how to funnel the energy and have magical fucking hands, which is crazy and
Yeah.
cool. I take you through the exact step-by-step process that I did to have magical fucking hands. And you'll also be a trauma-informed certified healer at the end as well. So
Oh, it's so cool. I love that. Okay. Um, my next question is how do we feel about the Pope? Like, do we like him? What are the vibes? Because his thing about surrogates last week, I was like, bro, like, okay, listen, like, I had people sliding into my DM. I posted something about it, and like, I had people sliding into my DMs being like, yeah, but surrogacy is not like great, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, bro, I can't, first of all, I can't have this conversation. We're talking about the Pope because, like, well, he's the leader of the Catholic Church. Like, that's what we're talking about here. We're not talking about surrogacy as like a whole. So, anyway, I have to know your vibes and thoughts on the Pope. What do we think of him?
I'm gonna go with peace on this one. Real peace with the Pope. Um, and the reason why is because I think the Pope's trying his best. I think
Yeah.
best. He has basically what he's done is he has harnessed himself as an incredibly liberal Catholic. He's a Jesuit,
Hmm.
world
Hmm.
famous for being crazy liberal, which we love.
Right.
Um, he has tied a harness around himself onto the front of a locomotive steam train that is barreling down a track at 1,000 million miles per hour. And he's going, but sexual pleasure can be okay, everyone. Please stop the train. Right? Like that's
Yeah.
what he's trying to do. Right? He's like, oh,
Right.
but if we give blessings to gay people as long as they're not married or whatever. Like, I
Yeah.
feel like every
Right.
time he comes out with one of these statements, he's doing it because he's trying to like at least get us to a place where that steam train that's going 1,000 miles per hour is about to go off a cliff. The
Right.
Catholic Church is about to die a very painful and
Hmm.
expensive death that will
Hmm.
impact the global economy. If you
Yeah.
think it won't, you're wrong.
Yeah.
First of all, just know that the Catholic Church is still the largest landowner on earth. Okay. Yeah. And they employ millions and millions of people.
Right.
Millions.
Yeah.
Maybe a billion. So when we talk about a sixth of the world's population, maybe who might work for the Catholic Church, you're talking about a massive global recession if the Catholic Church dies. And he realizes that, and he is trying desperately to stop it in any way that
Yeah.
he can that will not lose him more parishioners who are conservative. I don't envy him. I don't want his
Yeah.
job. I don't
Right.
want his job. Poor dude.
Yeah.
But it's coming. I mean, either way, it's like no matter what he does, he's damned if he does, and he's damned if he doesn't, because no matter what, the Catholic Church is on its way out.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, totally. I would love to read something about like the Catholic Church and like where people predict it's going. Um, so if you find anything, let me know. Okay, so the last one I
You're like, it's coming here.
have, I'm just curious. Okay, so this last one, you don't really have to give a like World War, world peace necessarily. I'm just purely curious about your thoughts. So one thing that is increasingly common at pageants is opera singers. Like they've been around in pageantry in the talent section for forever. And I have been fortunate enough to see many, many very lovely opera singers. Okay. My question is though, at pageants, how how do people who don't have formal opera training opera training like in their resume, how do they judge opera singers during the talent competition? It's how I've always wondered about like piano players, right? Like, so you have to be like, you do have to have a musical ear to know when someone fucks up on a piano. Like, in my opinion, like I feel like I've got a sort of a musical ear. So when someone screws up on the piano, I notice. I could never fucking tell you if an opera singer fucked up. Like I would have no fucking idea. And not because I don't like know notes or anything, but because it's such an art that I'm like, I don't, you have to be very skilled and trained in it to like be able to hear specifics. Okay. So how the fuck do people judge that? They
Ooh,
don't, right? Like,
that's a great question. No, I actually, I think that none of that is necessary. I don't think you need to have an understanding of the operatic voice or the technique in order to judge someone in a pageant for the quality of their opera singing. I think all you have to do is be a human being who's open to being moved by the beauty of music.
mm,
And your
mhm,
job as somebody who's in the pageant, who's singing the opera, your job is to move people. Your job is not to have a technically perfectly executed the high C. Your job
right.
to move people. And that's always your job, whether you're a pageant singer or you're a church singer or you're on the stage of the Metropolitan Opera, your job is to move people.
Mm,
A judge is going to know when they're moved or not. If they're crying,
yeah,
they're going to be like, what is this water leaking out of my eyes? 10 for you, 10
right.
out of 10,
Yeah.
right? But if they're like, oh, that was really painful to listen to, and I can't put my finger on why, but I really hated it, that's enough,
Yeah.
right? You know when someone's singing really well versus when they're not because you're moved. You know when someone's creating real art or if they're not because you're either moved or you're not moved, right? If someone's a
Mm.
total robot and they're just like singing like this at you and that's all they're doing, you're not going to feel anything. And therefore, the whole point of creating art has been lost and you failed. You failed at your job.
Huh. That is a lovely way of looking at it. I have never considered it that way. Wow, I'm never gonna view opera singing like the same way ever again because I just that's perfect. I love that. And what a amazing way to have it be about the art and not about the like the perfectionism of it all. You know, I just I think that's amazing. Oh, that's just beautiful.
I'm so glad it helped.
Okay. Maria, you are just amazing. It has been literally the most sincere pleasure having you on the show. Before we wrap up, tell everybody where the fuck they can find you, plug your website, plug your shit, Instagram, TikTok, all the things. Tell everybody where they can find you.
All right, so places you can find me, Instagram and TikTok at Ascending Arts. That's ASCENDINGARTS. Um, if you are hearing this before February 15th, I am running a program right now. I'm accepting applications until February 14th, Valentine's Day, for my year-long Reiki Master Certification Program, Ascension 101. So if you go to my Instagram and you click on the link in my bio, you're going to find that link for the application right at the top there. Go apply. I still have BIPOC scholarships available. So if you're BIPOC and you're looking for a full scholarship, do not wait. I have two, almost, I think 3 spots left. So we still have room for you in the program. If you want to learn how to go from being like a Joe Schmo to having magical fucking hands like me in a year, I will teach you everything you need to know. You don't have to be spiritual. You don't have to have a meditation background. You don't have to know anything about Reiki. If you're looking to like up level your spiritual life and learn more about yourself than you ever thought was possible in a year, that's the thing to do. So go to my Instagram and apply. Um, the other program that I offer, we didn't really talk about a lot, but it is called the Phoenix Rising. And this is a 3-month long trauma healing program. It's one-on-one with me. If you have C-PTSD, if you have PTSD, if you've experienced anything remotely similar to a trauma, if you were bullied in school, if you had a difficult childhood, all of those things can lead to behaviors, beliefs, patterns that don't serve your life. If
Mm.
you're perfectly happy with the way your life is, but you just feel like something's missing, this program is still for you. So that is called the Phoenix Rising. You can apply on my website at any time. Go to ascendingarts.exchange/this is the Phoenix or welcome to the Phoenix Rising. Or you can just hit up that link in bio on my Instagram and apply for that as well. That's a rolling program. It goes all the time. I only accept 5 Phoenixes into my program at any one given time. So if there's not room for you when you apply, we will make room for you when the next Phoenix leaves, and then you'll be in like Flynn.
Amazing. Oh, thank you so much, Maria. I appreciate you so much.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This was super fun.
I loved it. Oh, you're just the best.